She looked at me the way people look at something they have already decided about. I saw it in the half-second before her smile arrived, that small, careful recalibration behind her eyes. A door closing while appearing to open, and I knew, before she had spoken a single word, exactly what kind of conversation this was going to be. I was standing in one of the most beautiful hotel lobbies in Seoul, the Grand Hanwha Palace, marble floors the color of winter clouds, white orchid chandeliers throwing soft light across everything. A place that smelled of fresh flowers and quiet money, and the particular kind of elegance that does not announce itself because it does not need to. A place I had walked into every October for 23 years, and in that moment I was being made to feel like a mistake. My name is Adaeze Okonkwo-Choi. I am 61 years old. I had flown 14 hours from Lagos. I was wearing my cream Ankara blouse, the one my daughter Chisim had embroidered with small golden thread along the collar. My black wool trousers were pressed. My cognac leather handbag had been bought in Florence 12 years ago and had aged the way good things age, with character, earning every mark. My hair was natural, silver now. Pulled into a low bun at the nape of my neck, my grandmother used to say gray hair is not a surrender, it is an arrival. I walked to the front desk and I said, "Annyeonghaseyo." The young receptionist blinked. She switched to English immediately, not because I needed her to, but because she had already decided what I was. "Hello," she said, professional, practiced, a smile with no warmth behind it. "I have a reservation," I said. "My name is Adaeze Okonkwo-Choi, the Orchid Suite, please." She typed, stopped, looked at her screen, then looked at me again, that second look. I want you to understand that second look. It was not cruel the way cruelty announces itself with noise and heat. It was quiet and certain and entirely unconscious, the look of someone whose mind has already reached a verdict and is now simply processing paperwork to support it. "I'm sorry," she said. "I don't see a reservation under that name. Please check again," I said. "Okonkwo-Choi, Okonkwo-Choi," she typed again, slowly. "I'm sorry," she said again. "We are fully booked for this week. Perhaps there's been a booking error. You may want to contact your travel agency." "I did not book through a travel agency," I said. My voice was steady. "I book directly. I always book directly. My account is with Mr. Park Jun-ho, the general manager, if you could call him Mr. Park is in meetings." Her tone tightened slightly, the micro-adjustment of someone who has moved from uncertain to decided. "Perhaps you have the confirmation number. It was emailed to my assistant in Lagos. I can call her." "Ma'am," she said the word with a patience that was its own form of impatience. "Without a confirmation number, I'm afraid I cannot process a check-in. And as I said, our premium suites are fully. The Orchid Suite," I said very quietly, "has been reserved under my name every October for 23 years. She stared at me, I stared back. Not with anger, with something older than anger, the particular stillness of a woman who has been here before, not in this lobby, but in this moment. The moment where someone looks at you and sees everything except who you are. "I'm sorry," she said, for the third time, but this apology had no architecture. It was a wall dressed as a door. I nodded once, I picked up my handbag, I turned around. I want you to feel what those few steps felt like. The marble was cold and smooth beneath my heels. The orchid scent followed me. The chandelier light caught my movement and scattered it in small colors across the floor, as though even the ceiling was bearing witness to something it did not know how to stop. I pushed open the glass door. The October air of Seoul touched my face, clean, cold, honest, and then I heard it. From somewhere deep inside the hotel, near the corridor that leads to the executive offices, a voice sharp with something between panic and anguish. "Okonkwo-Choi. Okonkwo-Choi, Jamkanmanyo, please wait." I stopped, not because I was surprised, because I was tired. And because, in spite of everything, I have always believed that moments deserve to be met fully, even the hard ones, especially the hard ones. I turned around slowly. Park Jun-ho, general manager of the Grand Hanwha Palace Hotel, a man I had known for 15 of his 39 years on this earth, was running across that marble lobby. Running. Park Jun-ho, who moves with the controlled precision of someone who has internalized every principle of Korean business decorum. Who has never in my memory raised his voice above a calm professional register, was running across his own lobby with his jacket slightly askew. His face carrying an expression I had never seen on it before. The lobby went absolutely still. A bellhop near the elevator froze mid-step. 2 guests by the concierge desk turned. A porter holding luggage simply stopped and watched. Even the air in the room seemed to hold itself. Junho reached me. He bowed, not the polite professional bow, the real one, the deep one, the kind that comes from somewhere lower than training, from somewhere in the actual chest. Adaeze Okonkwo-Choi, he said, breathless. I am so deeply sorry. I was on a call. I did not know you had arrived. He straightened. He looked across the lobby at the young woman behind the desk. I did not turn to look at her, but I felt the entire lobby turn. I felt the weight of that collective gaze land somewhere behind me, on a young woman in a blazer who was only now beginning to understand the magnitude of what she had done. Please, Junho said to me, his voice dropping into something earnest and careful. Please come back inside. I looked at him. I said nothing for a long moment, then I said, Junho. How is your mother? He blinked, swallowed. The question had landed exactly where I intended it, not as deflection but as reminder. We are people first, always people first. She is well, *Nim, he said softly. She asks about you. Good, I said, good. I walked back through the glass door. Behind me the lobby exhaled. To understand what happened in that lobby, you need to understand the years before it. And to understand those years, you need to see a younger woman, 26 years old, standing in a modest office in Lagos in 1989. Holding a leather portfolio a little too tightly because she was determined not to look nervous. That woman was me. I grew up in Enugu in a home filled with discipline, education, and quiet ambition. My father was a civil engineer. My mother taught English literature and believed, completely and without compromise, that understanding people begins with understanding their stories. She made me read everything. You will travel far, she told me when I was 12, and when you do, you must learn how to see people properly. I did not fully understand what she meant then. I would later. After university, I worked in Lagos, learning business the practical way, how goods move, how money moves, and most importantly, how trust moves. Then one day, a colleague said a word that changed the direction of my life, Korea. I followed that word. In 1990, I arrived in Seoul for the first time, young, determined, and very aware that I stood out in every room I entered. I was watched. Sometimes with curiosity, sometimes with warmth, sometimes with uncertainty, always noticed, and being constantly noticed is its own kind of fatigue. I made mistakes, many. I misunderstood silences. I struggled with the language. I questioned myself more than I let anyone see. One evening, exhausted, I called my mother. Mama, I said, I am tired. Of what? Of having to prove I belong before anyone listens. She was quiet, then she said, do you know why the Iroko tree is respected? I sighed. Because it is large. No, she said, because it does not apologize for taking up space. It grows and the world adjusts around it. I wrote that down. I have lived by it ever since. In 1993, I met Kim Daewon. We were waiting for the same elevator at a trade conference. He told me pressing the button twice would not make it arrive faster. I know, I said. But it feels better. He considered that seriously, then nodded. That was how it began. We spoke at that conference, then the next, then the next. What started as professional conversations slowly became something else, something steady, thoughtful, and real. We married in 1996. Our life together was not built in a rush. It was built in layers: conversation, trust, shared work, shared silence. We had our daughter, Chisom, 2 years later. We built a business that moved between Nigeria and Korea, not just trading goods but building relationships. That was always the real work. In 2001, we chose the Grand Hanwha Palace, the Orchid Suite. It became our place. Every October, the same room, the same view, and always without fail, white orchids waiting when we arrived. That was Daewon's doing. He knew I loved them. He passed away in 2014. Too quickly, too early, the kind of loss that does not ask permission. After he died, I kept everything we had built, the business, the name, and the October trip, because some things are not habits. They are anchors. I wrote to the hotel. I asked simply if the orchids could remain. The reply came quickly: it would be our honor. That is the woman who walked into that lobby. A woman who had spent decades building a life across two worlds. A woman who had loved, lost, and continued. A woman who had learned slowly, firmly, not to shrink herself to fit someone else's expectations. And that is the woman who was told, politely and efficiently, that she did not exist. Junho told me pieces of what happened on his side of that lobby. Junho walked me to the suite himself. We did not speak in the elevator. Sometimes silence carries what words are not ready for. He opened the door and stepped aside. I entered. The Han River stretched beyond the windows, holding the last of the October light. The mountains beyond had begun their slow turn to amber and shadow, and on the table white orchids, Phalaenopsis. A quiet cascade, unchanged. I stood and looked at them. I remembered in October years ago, D1 sitting by that same window telling me about a doctor's concern he had carried alone all day. I had sat beside him, my hand over his, and we had looked at the orchids without speaking. Sometimes being together is the whole sentence. The orchids were still white, the river was still there. He was not, but I was. The room is perfect, I said. Thank you, Junho. He remained near the door. I need to address what happened downstairs. You don't, I said. I do, he replied. That is not who we are, and I will make sure it is not who we are going forward. Sit, I said. He sat straight-backed. She is young, I said. Yes, she made an assumption. Yes, and she does not yet know how easily that happens. He studied me. How are you so calm? I am not entirely calm, I said. I am sitting because my legs are carrying 23 years, 14 hours of travel, and a few minutes of being told I do not exist. He nodded. My dignity is not in your lobby, I said. No one gave it to me, no one can take it. What people reveal in moments like that is themselves. The room was quiet. She will face consequences, he said. I would prefer she face understanding, I said. He held that for a moment, then nodded. I understand. Good, I said. Now someone mentioned egusi soup. He looked up surprised, then he smiled. Chef O has been practicing your recipe, he said. He is very nervous. Tell him anxiety is not an ingredient I enjoy, he laughed. Welcome back, Okonkwo-Choi, he said. Thank you, Junho. He left. I sat in the chair by the window. The river moved. The orchids stood. And because I was alone, I let my eyes fill, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. He was not here, and yet everything we built still was. I sat with that. Then I stood, washed my face, and looked at myself in the mirror. Get up and keep going. The egusi soup arrived later. It was good, careful, almost right. I sent Junho a message, 8.5 out of 10, more crayfish next time. He replied quickly, Chef is celebrating, thank you. By evening, the city had settled into light. I called Chisholm. Mama, she said, are you all right? I am, I said. You're using your I am all right voice. I smiled. A small thing happened, I'll tell you when I get home. Tell me about the twins. She did. We spoke for a long time. And when I ended the call, sitting there with the river and the orchids and the quiet, I knew, with a certainty that does not need to announce itself, everything was going to be fine. She came the next morning. The knock was soft, almost uncertain. I opened the door. Su Jin stood there without her blazer, just a simple sweater, her hair pulled back, younger somehow. Less certain, she held a small bakery bag in both hands. She bowed, not the practiced kind, a real one. Annyeonghaseyo, she said, then carefully, I'm sorry, I know that's not enough. But I wanted to say it here, not through someone else. I looked at her for a moment. Come in, I said. I don't want to, you're already here. She stepped inside and sat on the edge of the sofa, placing the bag on the table. I brought honey bread, she said. I wasn't sure if I should. I like honey bread, I said. Leave it, she nodded. Morning light filled the room. The orchids were still by the window. Tell me something, I said. What did you see when I walked in yesterday? She took her time. Someone who didn't look like the guests I usually check in. What do they look like? She hesitated, then answered. Korean. Japanese, Western, business people, confident like they belong. And I didn't, she shook her head slightly. You looked like you didn't need to prove anything. She paused. Then said quietly, I think I mistook that for not belonging. I nodded once. Yes, she looked down. I didn't question it. I just trusted what I thought I knew. That happens, I said. She looked up, but it shouldn't have. No, I said, but now you've seen it. Silence. What matters is what you do with that, I said. She nodded slowly. After a moment she asked, why didn't you say more? You could have insisted. You could have proved myself. Yes, I glanced toward the window, because I shouldn't have to, I said. Respect isn't something you earn by explaining who you are, it's something you give because someone is standing in front of you. She was very still. Do you understand? Yes, she said. And this time I believed her. We sat quietly for a moment, then I said, tell me about you. She blinked. Me? Yes, and she did. Inchin, her parents, the small clothing shop, the expectations. And then more quietly, I wanted to study fashion design. I still think about it sometimes. Then don't let it go completely, I said. Some things don't disappear. They wait, she smiled just a little. My husband worked in textiles, I added. He used to say fabric holds memory. She listened. You're young, I said. You'll learn. If you stay open, something in her expression shifted, not dramatically, just settled. Thank you, she said. You didn't have to talk to me. No, I said. I didn't, she hesitated. Why did you? I thought for a moment. Because closing the door would have been easier, I said, and I've never been very good at that. she smiled. She stood, bowed again. Kamsahamnida, Chinmenyo. Her eyes widened slightly at that. A small moment, but real. She left. I picked up the bakery bag. The honey bread was still warm. I ate it by the window. The river moved, the mountains stood, the orchids remained quiet, unchanged, and the room felt lighter. I have a photograph on my desk in Lagos. Not the most professional one I own. I have hundreds of those, conference photographs, award photographs. The handshake photographs in front of flags that constitute the public record of a working life. But this photograph is my favorite. It was taken in 1997 at Kim Bok-soon's house in Gyeonggi Province during the Chuseok harvest celebration. In it, Daewon's mother and I are standing at her kitchen table making songpyeon, the small rice cakes prepared at Chuseok. Her hands are over mine, guiding the shape of the dough. We are both looking down at what our hands are making together, not at the camera. We did not know the photograph was being taken. Daewon took it quietly from the doorway. We were just two women in a kitchen, one who knew how, one who was learning, neither performing anything. That photograph is, for me, the whole story of what happens when two people from different countries, different cultures, different histories decide, without making a production of it, without press releases or formal declarations, to simply be present with each other. To let the hands work together to make something. Korea gave me nunchai, the art of reading what is in the room. I am not Korean and I will never have nunchai the way someone raised inside Korean culture holds it, but the concept changed how I listen. It changed how I read silence. It changed how I understand that what is not said is sometimes the most important thing being communicated. Korea gave me han, that complex, irreducible collective sorrow, that cultural memory of injustice and longing carried through generations without being allowed to become bitterness. Not identical to but resonant with what my own people carry, the recognition that grief can be communal without being paralyzing. That a people can hold their deepest wounds and still build, still create, still insist, with extraordinary stubbornness, on beauty. Korea gave me, through Daewon and his family and 23 years of returning to this city every autumn, the lived understanding that love does not require sameness. It requires willingness. The patient daily practice of trying to see through someone else's eyes while remaining, completely, unapologetically, your own self. And what did Nigeria give Korea? What did I bring across that distance? I brought my mother's conviction that language is the most powerful technology invented and that attempting someone else's language, even imperfectly, even stumblingly, is one of the deepest forms of respect available to a human being. I brought the Igbo understanding of *afu obi, one heart, which is about choosing to remain in relationship even when relationship is difficult. About understanding that the places where human connection fractures can become, if you are willing to do the genuine work, the places where something stronger ultimately grows. I brought egusi soup recipes to a Korean chef who practiced them for 3 weeks and earned an 8.5. I brought myself, Adaeze Okonkwo-Choi, a Nigerian woman with silver hair and an embroidered blouse and a life that has been built, not given, not inherited, but built across 2 continents, one conversation at a time. One relationship at a time, one October at a time. I stayed for 10 days. On the last morning I woke before the city did. I made tea from the small service on the side table, and I sat in my chair at 5:30 in the morning, and I watched Seoul move from darkness to the deep navy that comes just before dawn commits to arriving. The river was dark and still, the mountains were shapes against a changing sky, the orchids were white in the lamp's light. I thought about my mother. She died in 2017 at 83, still sharp, still deploying parables at breakfast. Her last message to me was a voice note, not her last words, but the last message sent 3 weeks before the end when she was still herself and still entirely my mother. Adaeze. You are doing well. I know you think I can't see from here, but I can. The Iroko tree has very large roots now. Very large. Keep growing, my daughter. Keep growing. I have listened to it hundreds of times. I cannot bring myself to delete it. I am 61 years old. I have built a company and loved a man and raised a daughter and buried a husband and witnessed the extraordinary generosity and the extraordinary smallness of which human beings are capable. Sometimes in the same hour. Sometimes in the same lobby, sometimes in the same chest. I am not finished. A soft knock at the door. I opened it. A young member of hotel staff, perhaps 18, clearly new, carrying a fresh arrangement of orchids with the concentrated care of someone determined to do something right. "Good morning," he said in English, bowing. "Mr. Park said for your last morning." "Thank you," I said. I stepped aside. He came in and replaced the arrangement with careful, focused attention. When he was done, he turned to Lave. "Wait," I said. He turned, slightly nervous. "What is your name?" "Kim Min-jun," he said. "Kim Min-jun, these are beautiful. Thank you for carrying them carefully." He looked uncertain whether to smile, then he did, fully. "Thank you, you're welcome. Your first month?" I asked. "Third week," he said, and something in his face relaxed with the relief of being seen accurately. "You will be fine," I said. "Pay attention, that is the whole secret." "Just pay attention," he nodded. He left. I finished my tea. I packed my bag, the small ritual of it, the folding of the Ankara blouse, the careful placement of the photograph of me and Baksoon in the inner pocket where it always travels. I looked around the room once the way I always do, not with sadness, though sadness is present, with gratitude. The particular, grounded gratitude of someone who knows that nothing is permanent and has learned, slowly, through loss and love and the long accumulation of Octobers, to love things fully in the time they are given. I took the elevator down. Junho was in the lobby, of course he was. He always sees me off personally. He was standing near the front desk, and beside him, in her blazer on shift, straight and composed, was Su Jin. When she saw me step out of the elevator, she bowed immediately. Not the managed professional bow, a real one, and when she straightened, her face was open in a way it had not been 2 mornings ago. Something had shifted in it, not completely. Not permanently resolved, nothing that real resolves in 2 days, but shifted, moving in a direction. "Good morning," she said. "Annyeonghaseyo," and then, "I hope you had a restful stay." "I did," I said. "Thank you, Su Jin." She had not expected me to use her name. I watched it land. She took a breath. And then she said something that she had clearly prepared, had clearly practiced. Because the Korean pronunciation of Ibo sounds is genuinely difficult, and she had worked to get it as right as she could, NNO, the Ibo word for welcome. Spoken in Seoul, by a Korean woman of 22 who had spent her days since our conversation doing exactly what she had said she wanted to do, learning a little more. And then a little more after that. I went still. The lobby was going about its morning business around us, guests crossing, staff moving, the quiet industry of a hotel waking into its day. But in the small space between Su Jin and me, everything went briefly, beautifully, completely quiet. I heard D1's voice, somewhere in the back of my memory, from a night in 1997 when we had been sitting on his mother's porch looking at the stars, and he had said, "The distance between 2 people is always shorter than it looks. You just have to be willing to make the first step, and then the other person makes the step from their side, and then you are standing in the same place." Su Jin had made her step. She was standing there, holding the word in the air between us. Her face carrying the vulnerability of someone who has attempted something earnest in front of a person whose respect they want to earn back, waiting to know if she had said it correctly. I looked at her for a long moment, then I said softly, "NNO," returning it to her, confirming it. "Yes, that is right. Yes." Her entire face changed, not a performance of relief, the real thing. The actual release of a breath that has been held. "I've been practicing," she said, quiet. "I found recordings online, and I've been reading about Nigeria, about Ibo culture. About the trade relationship. I didn't know any of it before." A pause. "I should have. You know some of it now," I said. "That is what matters." She nodded. Her eyes were steady. "I want to keep learning." "Then you will," I said simply, because she would. I could see the decision in her, the real kind, the kind that has been reached not because someone required it, but because a person has genuinely arrived somewhere new inside themselves. Junho, beside her, had the expression of someone who has witnessed something he will tell the story of for years. He walked me to the car. The October air was cold and clean. The city was fully awake now, pouring itself into the morning with the purposeful energy that Seoul does better than almost anywhere I have ever been. "Same time next October," he said. "Same time next October," I said. He bowed, I bowed back. I got into the car. As it pulled into the Seoul morning traffic, I looked back once through the rear window, the hotel entrance. The glass doors, through the lobby windows, I could see the pale cascade of the orchids. And standing near the front desk, watching the car move away, one figure in a blazer, hands clasped in front of her, already turning back to her work. Learning, still learning, I turned forward. The Han River was on my right, enormous and unhurried, carrying the morning light on its surface the way old rivers carry everything, without urgency, without drama, simply moving. as they have always moved toward where they are going. My phone lit up, a message from Chisum. The twins want to know when Halmione is coming home. Halmione, the Korean word for grandmother. Her children used whichever language arrived to them first in any given moment. Igbo grandmother, Korean grandmother, Lagos grandmother. Seoul grandmother, all of it woven together in the mouths of two 6-year-olds who did not yet know that the world considered these things separate. They were not separate, they had never been separate. I typed back, tell them Halmione is on her way. Tell them she has stories, tell them to be ready. I put the phone down. Outside, Seoul moved past the window. A city of extraordinary complexity, full of millions of people each at the center of a story I would never fully know. A city that had given me something irreplaceable, not because it is perfect, no city is, no people is, but because it is real. And real places, entered with real humility and real willingness to be changed, give you real things in return. They give you understanding. Always incomplete, always in progress, always worth continuing. They give you memory, the kind that lives not just in photographs but in the body itself, in the way your hands shape a bow without thinking. In the words that surface in a language not your own when the moment calls for them. In the recognition of a river that has worked its way into you so gradually you could not name the moment it arrived. They give you, if you pay attention and remain open, the willingness to remain open being the whole of the work, the daily practice of it. The lifelong practice, something that can only be called love. The wide kind, the non-possessive kind. The kind that does not ask you to be different from what you are, but shows you, over years, over Octobers. Over cups of tea at windows overlooking rivers, parts of yourself you could not have discovered alone. I am Adaeze Okonkwo-Choi. I walked out of a hotel lobby with everything I came in with. And I walked back in not because I was summoned, not because I was recognized, not because a manager ran across a marble floor calling my name, but because I chose to. That is the difference. That will always be the difference. The car moved forward, Seoul opened ahead of me, wide and living and full of everything still to come. I watched it, all of it, with the eyes my mother gave me. The kind that have already decided, the kind that keep going. The kind that grow, from a letter written by Su Jin 4 years later. To the Korean Nigerian Cultural Exchange Foundation, submitted as part of her application for their Hospitality Diversity Fellowship, I want to tell you about a woman I once turned away from a hotel desk because I looked at her and made a decision before I had given myself the chance to see her. I want to tell you what she did instead of what I deserved. She came back through the door. Not for me. For herself, because she has never, in 60-something years, allowed someone else's failure of imagination to determine where she belongs. And the morning after. She opened her suite door and invited me in and asked me to tell her about myself, not about my mistake. About myself, I have thought about that choice every day since, the choice to remain curious about a person who had just failed you, the choice to educate instead of simply punish. The choice to leave a door open when closing it would have been entirely justified. I am applying for this fellowship because I want to build a career on the opposite of what I did that afternoon. I want to build it on what she showed me instead. Her name is Adaeze Okonkwo-Choi. She taught me that welcome is not a policy, it is not a training module. It is not a smile practiced in front of a mirror until it reaches the right professional temperature. Welcome is the decision made fresh every time. For every person who walks through every door to see the human being before you see anything else. I am still learning how to do that, but I am learning, and I know now. That learning is the whole point. Somewhere in Lagos, a woman reads this letter on a Tuesday morning. She is sitting at her desk. The photograph of her in Boksoon is in its frame to her left. The October light is coming through the window. In 3 weeks she will fly to Seoul. She reads the letter once. Then again, then she sets it down and looks out the window at the Lagos morning, enormous, noisy, alive. Full of everything, and she smiles. The Iroko tree does not explain itself to the forest, it simply grows and grows and grows, dedicated to every woman who has carried her proof of worthiness in her own chest, where no lobby can reach it, and to D1, who knew before I did that the distance between two people is always shorter than it looks. You just have to be willing to make the first step. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoy this story, stay connected to us.